Hello friends, you're watching College Football Now. I am Tom Downey. Alongside me is James Yoder, live from the College Football Playoff National Championship here in the Bay Area, James.
It's good to be, Tom. It's good to be back in the Bay Area a little
back
bit for us. Exciting weekend so far, Tom. We went to Media Day. You've got the media party, all kinds of stuff going on here. It's downtown San Jose. People who are a little geographically challenged or so. That is about 25 minutes south of where the game will be played in Santa Clara, California, where the 49ers play. Tom, we're going to break down the 5 things that each team needs to do to win this game, which in my opinion is the matchup of the best 2 college football teams going together in a national title game. For me, in like at least a decade. I can't even think of one that's, I think not just obviously this year, but I think 2 teams that I think are like super strong in more, like maybe Texas, USC back in 2005.
All right, that first key of the game, like you mentioned, James, for Clemson at least, pressuring Tua, which we know they can do. They have that great defensive line led by Clelin Ferrell, led by Christian Wilkins, no Dexter Lawrence, but this is a really good Clemson front four.
What would you take away from talking to some of the players on Clemson and Alabama, what they thought the loss of Dexter Lawrence would do for this game?
I think for Clemson, they kind of benefited from having beaten the Fighting Irish without Dexter Lawrence and having a pretty solid and deep defensive line to begin with, and obviously they're going to miss Dexter Lawrence. He's going to be a first-round pick, assuming he does go pro. But Christian Wilkins has been so good for Alabama or for Clemson. Even in the run game, he hasn't been as impactful in the passing game in terms of sacks as he's been in the past. But he and Clelin Ferrell could have gone pro, probably would have been first-round picks. They came back to have one more chance, and I think that they'll be fine up front. And I think at some level they're almost kind of playing for Dexter Lawrence because he's not there, because that defensive line, they're tight.
Yeah,
they are really tight.
They are tight, Tom. And these guys are all going to be multimillionaires in a matter of months when they all go to the NFL.
Ferrell especially.
3 of them at least projected in the first round. But Ferrell talked to you and I at Media Day, and he made it seem like, Tom, that it wasn't a big deal. He's going to miss his friend. He's going to miss his boy, and they'll miss him. But it gave them an opportunity to get some of these younger, super talented Clemson players in there for some rotations. Could end up helping them, long-term into next year necessarily.
Albert Huggins will be the first man up in place of Dexter Lawrence as a senior himself, and even though he's the backup, he's still probably going to get drafted. That's how deep they are.
Yeah, and the one thing about pressure too, at Tom, we talked to some of the defensive linemen. We asked them specifically about the different quarterbacks that they face. Ian Book versus Tua, and it's clear that Clemson does not fear Tua as a runner, as all kind of compared to Jalen Hurts the last couple years. Hurts starting last year in the semifinal, and then of course last year in the semifinal, 2 years ago in that national title game. So with that pressure Tua, Tom, he is 3,600 yards passing, 41 touchdowns, but that was in some spot duty where he didn't really play in the fourth quarter for almost all of the games
really
so far this season. Only those 4 interceptions. Tom didn't have one, I believe, until the LSU game, which was early November, right?
Which was funny to me because we talked to the Alabama players, and I was like, okay, what were some of your favorite moments this year? And a lot of them said beating LSU. Yeah,
for sure. And walking in there and getting a 29-0 victory was big time. So, Tom, I'll ask you the question we ask our audience watching here on YouTube and on Facebook Live. We are live from the College Football Playoff audio app. How many sacks will Clemson have versus Alabama? What do you think it's going to be?
I think somewhere in that 2 to 3 range, which doesn't seem like a lot, but against Alabama's offensive line, I kind of feel like it is.
Okay.
If they can get those on 2nd and 3rd down, that's where they set themselves up for success.
Okay, Tom, so I'm going to ask you this question before we move on to our next point. You can't say 2 or 3. How many sacks do they get?
They're going to get 3.
Okay. Can't say 2 or 3.
Oh.
Can't say 2 or 3.
Why can't I say 2 or 3?
Because that's almost like saying, grade yourself on a scale of 1 to 10. If you say, people say, oh, I give myself an 8, you can't say 7 or 8. Either you got to go for the gold or go for 9.
4.
Okay, got it. Okay. I'm going with none.
Oh.
I'm going with none on that one. I think we'll talk about this more when we get to our Alabama keys to the game later on the show. But I actually think that Alabama has something up their sleeves for Clemson. I'll talk about that, why I think that, what I gleaned from Media Day.
Okay. All right, next up on the keys to the game for the Clemson Tigers, that's forcing turnovers, which, as we mentioned, Alabama doesn't really do a whole lot of that, especially now that Tua is back and healthy.
Yeah, and Tom, last week when I went to the College Football Playoff semifinal, it was Clemson versus Notre Dame in Dallas, Texas. I was telling the people I was sitting there watching the game, but some of them rooting for Notre Dame openly, I said, look, if you guys get into a close game with Clemson, that their freshman quarterback has not had enough experience to really kind of, just not been a lot of close games. The same kind of thing with Tua. He only had adversity in one game, and the running backs obviously have had more adversity, been there for more than just season. But if Clemson gets some turnovers from Alabama, that puts this entire Alabama offense in a scenario they really haven't been all year, which is making the defense work for it, right, and putting the defense in a bad position. So it is vital. If Clemson's going to win this game, you've got to pick off Tua 2 times, and then you've got to get a fumble or something like that.
And that's something their number 1 cornerback, TRAYVON, MULLEN, hasn't really done so far this year. He's a very talented player. player, lanky, long, fits the NFL type of mold these days, but the interceptions aren't there. He had 3 picks last season and has dropped down to 0 this year. Now would be a nice time to get that first interception of the season.
You talk about this Clemson defense, Tom. When you and I were sitting pouring over some beers while putting together stats, looking at the numbers to show, the thing that stood out to me most across all the stats, offense and defense, turnovers, everything, is just how consistently good across every aspect of the game. Defense, rushing, passing, points, offense, the same kind of things that Clemson was, where Alabama, passing went up this year, rushing came way down, defense wasn't in the top 2-3 like it always is. So I think this Clemson defense is underrated nationally. I think it's a really stacked defense. That defensive line gets all the accolades, Tom, but they are doing good, leading the country in points per game, second in rushing per game, second in total yards per game, and of course gave up some yards passing, but they were playing with a 66-10 lead half the second half of the game they were playing in, so that forced the other team to pass. So that's not unexpected. We take a look at the Alabama offense. Take us through what you're seeing.
Maybe it's very different than what we've seen in the past. In the past, and Cleveland Farrell even kind of mentioned this as well, that in the typical and prototype, stereotypical, whatever you want to call it, Alabama quarterback has been the game manager type. Not the case this year.
Not the case at all. Not the case at all here, Tom. And what it sticks out to me about this Alabama defense going against the Clemson defense, of course, is that they're going to have to do it through the air. So if they do that, they have got to have a shorter passing game that they have done all year. We watched what Alabama's done in some of their better games. It was get Tua throwing the ball deep downfield for quick touchdowns, quick stretch offense. We saw it against Oklahoma. I don't think they're going to have a chance to do that. So I expect the Alabama offense to get a shorter passing game and get the running backs involved in the passing game much more than they have.
They torched Oklahoma on slants. I don't think that'll be the case against Clemson. All right, folks, if you haven't already, subscribe to us on YouTube. If you're watching on YouTube, just hit that button. Subscribe right now. Get us to 80K subscribers, excuse me. 800K down the road, I guess, right?
Tom was walking through the media area. Ambitious. Someone saw my name tag. He said, James Yoder, you're the sports network on YouTube. I said, absolutely, we are. Chat Sports, YouTube.com/ChatSportsTV, the TV network of YouTube, they call us, Tom.
Absolutely. All right, so subscribe if you haven't already, folks. In the meantime, we'll talk more about these Clemson keys to the game on the ground. Got to get Travis Etienne going, and he had that big 69-yard run against Notre Dame, which was a big factor in his production against the Fighting Irish. But beyond that, he wasn't as effective as we've seen for much of the season. It was kind of bottled up early.
And Tom, they give him the ball. They trust Travis Etienne inside the 10-yard line, and he certainly gets more touchdowns than I think sometimes his yards would dictate. We know when we're looking at Heisman through the middle of the season, Etienne would have 2 and 3 touchdowns in certain games when he only had 50 or 60 yards rushing. But you have a true freshman. You have a true freshman in Trevor Lawrence. You need to protect him. I don't care how good of a player he is, whether he's the #1 pick in the draft in a couple years from now. If they can't do anything on in the running game, if Etienne doesn't get off and do better than 109 yards is certainly a fine game, but that was, you said, 69 yards early in the game, so really he only got 40 yards the rest of the game on those other 13 carries, so that's not necessarily going to open things up. Alabama needs to have that threat of the run, so they can't just sit back and tee off on Trevor Lawrence, double team and fade towards the better receivers.
A couple times early in that game we saw some keepers by Trevor Lawrence on read options we hadn't seen necessarily a ton of in previous Clemson games, because a lot of them were blowouts. You need to bring that play in the playbook or miss your quarterback getting hurt. I wonder if you see more of the same against Alabama, try and trick them.
Yeah, so those 22 touchdowns for him, though, Tom, so super big time. I mean, 2, 3 touchdowns, 3 touchdowns, 4 touchdowns, almost every game he was there. This is not your prototypical Alabama defense, though, Tom.
It's down year, and it's still really good.
They're still really good. A down year, but Tom, they've got 5 first-rounders potentially in this year's draft, let alone the guys that are a little bit back in the draft class. But 13th in yards per game, that is a little bit back. They focus more on offense. The defense has struggled, probably because they are lengthening the game for their defense, more possessions for their defense because their offense is such a quick strike scoring offense.
Meanwhile, Clemson's offense has been so good this year as well, and I think in particular they got a big boost for it once they moved full-time to Trevor Lawrence, giving him the chance to be a more dynamic passer than Kelly Bryant was for them.
Tom, and we'll look at this stat later, but the most interesting thing to me is how everything changed when Trevor Lawrence took that job. So we know that Kelly Bryant started those first 4 games, but Trevor Lawrence got in that 4th game. But they had 2 games, Tom, which were in one game 2 points, another game under a touchdown. Since then, Tom, Notre Dame, the 27-point win, was one of their top 3, closest games. It's blowout every single game. So what that says to me is, 1, Trevor Lawrence hasn't been in any close games, so this will be new territory for him. And number 2, it says is that Trevor Lawrence was a heck of a lot better quarterback than anybody gave him even credit for as a true freshman.
All right, so Travis Etienne, how many rushing yards will he have against Alabama? James, what's your prediction?
I'm going to go like 75, Tom. I don't think
69.
He's good. Okay, nice. Just like that one,
you guys get it.
that 1 yard. That's what's up. 75, Tom. I think
that's
that
about the right range, I think, though.
Yeah, but I think that if Nick Saban's looking at all things being equal, being the, I guess, defensive coordinator of Alabama like he's been for the last 12, 13 seasons, he's going to say, we're not going to let this kid Etienne go off. And I say, if we're going to lose this game, if I'm not going to win this national title this year, we're going to make a true freshman, beat us through the air.
Yeah. All right, one more key to the game here for Clemson. Hit the big plays. Two more left. This is our next one up, excuse me. Hit the big plays like they did against the Fighting Irish. They had a couple of quick strikes all of a sudden. Game's over, just like that in the second quarter.
Yeah, Tom, it's really crazy at that game. First quarter, it's a 3-3 game, and towards the middle of the second quarter, went to visit a friend who was around the corner sitting around another suite. And, Tom, by the time I get over there, 5-minute walk, it went from being a tie game, or Clemson was up by 7-3, whatever it was, and it was also in a blowout. It was 22-3. I don't remember the exact numbers, but they were so quick strike. They got that play deep in the end zone, the one that was a tip ball. It was night and day. And I know we talked to Ian Williams, former Notre Dame player, that hey, look, our cornerback, Clemson, Notre Dame's cornerback went out, but nevertheless, Clemson got it going in the second quarter, big time.
And they have those dynamic wide receivers led by T. Higgins. Didn't have the world's greatest game against Notre Dame, but 4 for 53 and 1 TD is nothing to ignore necessarily. You'll see him on Sundays in the very near future. Had a fantastic game or season overall for Clemson. Hunter Renfrow as well, who he steps up in championship games. That's his MO.
He sure does, Tom. The game-winning touchdown in the game 2 years ago to win Clemson that national championship from Deshaun Watson. He sure is, Tom. And we were joking. He feels like he's been there since about 2004.
He's part of the all-time. Feels like he should have been graduate already.
Yeah,
along with JT Barrett.
Hunter Renfrow just celebrated his 30th birthday, enrolling. Now he's in law school for Clemson. But we got a chance to see him at Media Day, Tom. Big fan favorite. Was signing a lot of autographs. Guy that's been there for a long time. Won them a national title. You could say maybe the receiving end of the most impactful play in Clemson football history.
I think that's actually very accurate there. So again, hit the big plays is key for Clemson, and of course that very much ties into their quarterback. Trevor Lawrence can be just the second true freshman to start and win a national championship game. Of course, Tua kind of counts, but
second half.
Second half, so it doesn't quite count. That's out of the way. One of very few, along with Jamel Holloway, the Oklahoma quarterback.
Yeah, and Tom, he acts like a vet. We were right up talking to him from a moment away, just us and a couple other people at Media Day, and he was very mature. He was very dedicated with his answers. It seems to me that he takes the Peyton Manning-like approach, Peyton Manning being his idol, and a few people know he grew up his early years in the state of Tennessee, idling Peyton Manning from there, and he looks like, Tom, he looks from up close, he looks like an NFL quarterback already at 18, 19 years old, so 65% on the year. Time. He only started 8 games, 9 games, so he started his 10th game. This will be his 11th with the championship game and, of course, the college football playoff. 3,000 yards, Tom, averaging 300 yards a game through the year as a true freshman. Incredible. Only 4 interceptions is what's most impressive about me, Tom, to go along with those 27 touchdowns against Notre Dame. Also phenomenal. Once he got it going in the second quarter and beyond, Tom, 27 of 39, 327. These are the kind of numbers that he is going to have to put up against Alabama. If he doesn't put up similar numbers, Tom, I don't think they have a chance to win. I just don't. I don't see Alabama getting shredded for 200 or 300 yards on the ground.
And I asked him at Media Day about, you can be one of those rare players to actually win the national title. You can be that freshman quarterback, and he just kind of not really dismissed it, but it didn't really impact him. I think he's still in the I'm here. All I want to do is win. I don't care if I'm a freshman or not.
Yeah, there's a question, Tom, that I think that we've tried to do that to get a good answer out of him is very poignant, very stoic in his answers. Take a look at these two guys, Tom. Some people say they will be the first pick in the not this coming NFL draft, but the 2020-2021 NFL draft. Being a true freshman, being a true sophomore, I don't remember in my 25-plus years, since I was a young boy watching college football, ever having 2 quarterbacks this young, this good at the same exact time.
And with the expectation we'll see them again next
Tom, this is the national championship game next year. I guarantee you, unless Tua decides to sit out his junior year and go to the NFL. You see those numbers, Tom. I don't remember an 18-year-old, 19-year-old quarterbacks being this good my entire life. To have 2 doing it at the exact same time is out of this world. Tom, I'm going to ask you this question as we wrap up our 5 Clemson keys to the game to win this national championship game. How many yards do you think Trevor Lawrence will throw against Alabama?
314. He's going to pass the 300-yard mark because he's going to keep them in the game.
You throw this little 314 time. That's the pie number. What are you trying to say? Trying to throw out some Illuminati stuff with me?
Wasn't even thinking pie at all there.
Yeah, I think it's 2. I'm going to go 325. I think Trevor Lawrence is going to have a day against Alabama. So that is the question, Tom. We want to know from you guys. Answer below. That is all we have to say, Tom, for Clemson. Their 5 keys to the game to win this national championship against Alabama.